everyone, it's Jamie from Great Lakes Water Safety. Welcome to Virtual Water Safety Jam 2. We had a great kickoff session last week on opening beaches in the wake of COVID-19. And this week we have another topic that you told us you wanted to hear about, nudging people toward being safer around water. What are ways of influencing and persuading anyone to do the right thing for themselves and others? We have two speakers for this week's jam, myself and Susan Ock, community leader and lifelong water safety advocate. Mark Breederland from Sea Grant is also helping moderate and keep us in our lane. Mark, any housekeeping items for our guests?
Not that I can think of. Again, just generally, we're going to try to use the Q&A box. Again, if you hold your mouse in the middle, the Q&A bubble will kind of appear towards the bottom of the screen. We can put questions in there. And then if you have a comment, I want to share with everybody, hit the chat one. And then that's we get a chance to capture that through time. So if you want to make a statement, chat would probably be the best place to put it. So thanks, Jamie.
All right. So first, just thank you for being here. I know this has been a horrible week following some very challenging months. We feel helpless and overwhelmed and break down at times. And then there are moments when we have breakthroughs at home, at work, and with the causes that are near and dear to our hearts, like water safety and drowning prevention. Everyone's becoming painfully aware that there's a second pandemic of racism in this country. And I like to say that Great Lakes are the great equalizer. Lake Superior doesn't care if you're black or white or brown or green. Lake Huron doesn't care if you're a man or a woman or LGBT or Q. Lake Erie doesn't care if you're young or old. Lake Ontario doesn't care if you're Catholic or Muslim or Jewish or atheist. Lake Michigan doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican or independent. They will all drown those who don't respect the power and take safety precautions. So massive numbers of people are feeling stir crazy and can't wait to get away for a while and head to their favorite places. I'm certainly one of them. But that's where we come in, because for many, the last thing that they're thinking about are the dangers. They just want to get in or on the water at all costs. But we need to disrupt them on this journey and help them safely enjoy their day at the park or beach. So today's topic explores ways of doing that from our experience. And of course, we want to hear yours. We are a community of best practice. The Great Lakes Water Safety Consortium is about people learning and freely sharing what we know and can help help people safely enjoy the waters of the Great Lakes area. In support of our many goals and initiatives as a nonprofit, we rely on the generosity of individual donations from great sponsors and individuals. The organizations supporting this series so far are the DNR's Coastal Management Program from Illinois, many Sea Grants, especially Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and other like-minded nonprofits like FASTAR in Cleveland, and forward-thinking companies like Wells Street Beach in Indiana. So, how do we nudge people to be safer? I used to say that if everyone knew the collective knowledge of our members, we could end drowning, but it's not that simple. People don't act or change based on knowledge and education. Many need some persuasion. After the underwater panther, rip current monster, tried to take me to the bottom of Lake Michigan, I changed my behavior. Most near-death experiences do. I started returning each year to that spot, and instead of being a victim, I was a watcher, and I tried to help keep others safe. And I also got married back on that beach several years later, which was pretty cool. But did that mean that I didn't take risks anymore? That I would live a totally safe life? No. I mean, as humans, we need both certainty and uncertainty, or variety, plus significance and love and growth and contribution to thrive. So yeah, I jumped off that tower, but I researched the risks first. I weighed my options. I knew the potential danger, unlike when I ventured out into Lake Michigan that fateful day just to play in the waves a little. I remember on the first anniversary of my incident, the waves were huge and there were 3 teenage girls out there playing with no flotation near a breakwater. And I approached their parents on the beach and warned them that a rip current could form and they might not be able to get back to the beach. And to my surprise, they ignored me. I told them the same thing had happened to me there a year ago, and they said they'd be fine, and they brushed me off. So I gave up on them and started signaling to the girls myself to come in. And at that point, the parents started doing the same and they came back. I found that fascinating. I've always been fascinated by what makes people do the things they do. I minored in social psych in college and have studied it on and off ever since. Of course, I always use my powers for good, not evil. And here are the basic principles from Dr. Cialdini, who literally wrote the book on persuasion. So let me just hit these really quickly for you so you have a basic overview of these principles. Reciprocity: you give something to someone or you do something for someone, they feel an obligation to repay you. It's as simple as that. We've all felt it, and we've tried to refuse kind gestures because we don't want to feel that sense of obligation. Commitment and consistency is simply pointing out that someone has set a precedent of doing something, so it's easier to get them to do it again. People don't like to be called wishy-washy or a waffler or weak, even if it really means that they're evolving and learning from their past mistakes. Social proof is also called the bandwagon approach because people look to others before deciding what to do themselves. So if you can show that everyone else is doing it, you might just get that person to do it too. Authority certainly helps persuade people. Doctors, judges, first responders, generals, even celebrities for some reason. Um, Liking simply means that if someone likes you, they're more likely to do what you ask. The ability to quickly establish rapport with anyone is a great skill. Find something in common, find something funny, offer a genuine compliment, ask questions, and listen. Those are quick ways to establish rapport. And scarcity means if someone thinks something is going away, they're more likely to want it. You know, last chance, ending soon, don't miss out. And then a bonus one that I really like, I call the contrast principle, which means if you can contrast an offer to something just before it, it helps. So instead of just saying something costs $30, first you say it used to be $50, you know, the typical price tag with the old higher price crossed out. So you have something to compare it to. Much more effective. And it's based on an experiment with three buckets. Somebody has three buckets in front of them with water in them, and the one on the left has really warm water, the one in the middle is room temperature, and the one on the right is cold water. And if you put your left hand in the really warm water and your right hand in the really cold water, you take them out and then you put them both in the bucket in the middle with the room temperature water. It feels really cold to your left hand and really hot to your right hand, even though you know it can't really be that way. So it's about contrast. It's about what happens immediately before. So those are some principles. And nudging helps people make better choices. And I really like this phrase, and I got it from this New York Times bestseller called Nudge by Robert Thaler and Cass Sunstein. At the most basic level of our 70 million year old lizard brains, what it all comes down to is pain and pleasure. We base our decisions on what will give us the most pleasure and the least pain. And we will do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. Pain may take many forms: discomfort, embarrassment, rejection, anxiety. So what we need to do is to get people to associate more pain with not doing the right thing than in continuing to do the wrong thing. Connect in their minds dangerous behavior to pain and safer behavior to pleasure. We need to appeal to both sides of these lizard brains with facts and emotions. By calling those kids back into shore myself, created enough pain in those parents to reach a tipping point and to call them back in themselves. Another story from several years later, back at that same beach, it was very crowded, really hot, busy day, lots of people in the water. And I noticed a parent with a young girl in one of those floatables, a big giant unicorn. And she's touch supervision, doing everything right. I don't see anybody else that's doing anything that might get into trouble. So I went back to working on my tan. And then a little while later, I look up again and the mom is over there working on her tan about 20 feet away from me, and the girl's in the water by herself on this floatable. So I'm thinking, all right, see something, say something, right? So I think about an approach and I go over and I just introduce myself, you know, beautiful day, complimented her on something and said, you know, I noticed your little girl's in the water there by herself. And I'm looking at that flag. You see that flag over there up the beach? You can tell that the wind's blowing parallel to the beach, which is fine. At worst, she's just going to go a little bit down the shore. But if that wind shifts at all from the east to west, all of a sudden she's going to be gone and you will not be able to catch her. And at first she kind of, you know, brushed me off a little bit thinking about it. And I thought I'll give her a chance to react. And like 2 minutes later, she was in there with her again with the touch supervision. So see something, say something, try an approach. Not everything's going to work, But the important thing is to try different things. And based on what you're going to learn today, you're going to feel more confident in doing that. We don't want to regret something later. We don't want to regret not saying something. And of course, they don't want to regret not acting on what you say. So the more persuasive we can be, the better. I think, I mean, I definitely want to give Susan enough time for hers. So I think I'll stop there and turn it over to her. Again, if you have questions for me or comments, put questions in the Q&A, comments, stories, experiences that you've had that are similar to this, things that you've tried that worked or didn't work, put them in the chat and we'll have that captured. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Susan Ock.
Thank you, Jamie. Those were good stories. Nudging is the important word here because we want to, you can't make people change just because you want them to change. We have to push them in the right direction. And the first thing you have to do is make them want to listen to you. Next. Next, Jamie. Jamie talked about some situations. Here's the ones that I see a lot. Paddle boarders, emulating one of those beautiful Pure Michigan ads, out on the water, no PFD, no leash, often cold water. Who's watching the kids? I walk the beach. I'm always, as a former lifeguard, I'm always looking at kids, looking to find the person who has their eyes on that kid. And when there's nobody who seems to be watching the kids, then that's when I end up buttonholing strangers. Swimming near a structure or current we know that that's dangerous, but a lot of people don't know that that's dangerous. And of course, you have the red flag day. With our beaches so small right now, with the water so high, I'm not sure how red flag days are going to work at all this year, but that's when people get into trouble. So that's now you may be down there you may be next to the water because you want to do some water safety work. You may just be out there trying to enjoy the day, and like Jamie, somebody just starts doing something stupid, and then you're going to have to figure out how to steer the situation. Next one. You don't want to do this. Nobody wants to get yelled at. You can't influence people unless you've made them like you. Next one. So you say something. I like to start with a compliment, but it doesn't have to be a compliment. You can talk about the weather. You can ask somebody where they're from. We're always facing the water. First of all, when you looking somebody straight in the eye, face to face, is very confrontational. If we need to model the behavior that we want to see. So I'll be talking to somebody, but I'm scanning the water still. And when my eyes are on the water, that makes them realize that there might be something worth looking at out there. We're going to keep it light, informational, not confrontational. Next slide. Nobody wants to be told that they're a bad parent. Everybody wants to think that they're competent in the situation. I've heard it said that 80% of the people polled think that they're better than average drivers. That's not how averages work, but that's how people think. You leave them out. You give them information, but give them a chance to be the smart one. Lots of people think that a calm day is a safe day, but we know that if the wind's blowing offshore, you could be in trouble. Lots of people think that good swimmers don't drown, but research shows that a majority of the people who drown are good swimmers. It looks safe to be out on that paddleboard with no life jacket, but what do you think the water temperature is? think about what might happen when you fall in. I used to think that if my kids got in trouble, I would hear them, and then I would go help them. Then I found out that drowning is silent, and that with little kids, there's often not even a splash. Next slide. Repetition is the key to learning. So we're going to keep using these same phrases. Don't just bring that life jacket, wear it. Break the grip of the rip. Flip, float, and follow. Flip, float, and follow is what I'm looking for whenever I ask somebody, what are you going to do when you get in trouble in the water? One of my proudest moments was putting up some beach safety signs and having a 12-year-old come over and see what I was doing. And I said, well, do you know what to do when you get caught in the rip current? And he rolled his eyes and, yeah, flip, float, and follow. And I said, oh, how did you know that? And he says, I was born here. And I let him diss me and walked right off. And I was proud as punch because we are changing the culture of water safety. Keep using these phrases. Next slide. Use positive phrases. Nobody wants to be told, don't do this, don't do that. Be smart, be safe. We all know from the struggle about wearing masks right now, or for the struggle about staying home for COVID, that once you tell somebody that they can't do something, that's what they really want to do. So so we're not going to say, don't go in that water, it's dangerous. We're going to say, be smart if you're going to go in there. Think about your choices. I like to suggest I'm very lucky that in my township we have inland beaches as well. So if it's a bad day, I can suggest a different beach. And don't expect the light to come on. Don't expect a conversion. Don't expect somebody to say, oh yeah, you were right and I was wrong. In my experience, that is a sign of somebody trying to brush you off. So you're going to say your piece, you're going to get your information and do as Jamie did, step back and see what happens. Next slide. What is your plan? This is my all-purpose, this is a very good question. If you fall off that, what is your plan if you fall off that paddleboard? What is your plan if you find yourself in big waves that are subtly carrying you out? What is your plan if you're playing in the waves and suddenly there's a big log rolling around with you? What is your plan? When you ask people that question, it puts them in the idea of not just an abstract problem, but now it's their problem. Lots of people think that they couldn't possibly get in trouble near water. But what is your plan if somebody else does something? What if somebody else gets in trouble? What is your plan? Do you have cell phone coverage? Is your cell phone picking up a signal in this area or across the lake somewhere? Is there something that you can throw? Is there something you can reach somebody with? What is your plan? Next slide. Leave them wanting more. Don't wait for that. Say what you need to do and move on. Learning takes repetition. Leave on a good note. You can always watch from afar, as Jamie talked about. And if you're watching somebody in a Kmart kayak heading out trying to cross the lake, you may want to consider taking notes. What are they wearing? What color is the kayak? When did they leave? And you may want to consider calling authorities and letting them know what you saw. If they have to do a search and rescue, they're going to want to know all of that information. Next slide. Okay, that was great. And what Jamie said was great, but now we're going to take a detour into the teen brain. Next slide. Teen brains are under construction. We're moving from childhood to adult. And like most human progress, this is not linear. The prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain, the center of risk analysis and decision-making, is the last part of your brain to develop. Most people are surprised to find out that that development is still taking place at age 24. Next slide. Teen brains are wired to seek rewards, to seek pleasure in new experiences. We often try to counsel teenagers by telling them to act more like adults. You might as well counsel your cat to act like a dog. It's just not going to work. Teens are good at abstract decision-making and what they call cold decision-making. That means that if they have enough time and enough information, they can, even a 15-year-old can make decisions that are almost as good as an adult decision. Teenagers are filled with, they have more oxytocin receptors right now than any other time in your body. So you're gonna feel, they're making strong bonds with friends. This is when romance is really strong. Their feelings are, they seem silly to us, but to them, they are front and center. Teenagers are empathetic and willing to sacrifice for others. Next slide. But remember that undeveloped prefrontal cortex, there's more reliance on the limbic system for what Jamie refers to as the lizard brain. For when it's a hot decision making, when you have to make a decision on the fly, they are not going to rely on logic. They're going to rely on emotion. The oxytocin receptors also make teens very self-conscious, filled with social anxiety, and they have a need to save face. All this means that they may be willing to take risks even when they understand the danger. And in fact, teens require more risk to get the same excitement rush that adults feel. So remember, you're dealing with a different animal. Next slide. Okay, I'm not a brain scientist, but I found these slides to be fascinating. These are from the National Institute of Health, from a paper called Maturation of the Adolescent Brain. This is how adults make decisions. Next slide. This is when the limbic system takes over. And you notice it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. The top left is motivation and reward, and the right under it is nucleus accumbens, which is a fancy word for wanting to seek new behaviors. Next slide. We have these, we know these things about the teen brain, so how are we going to deal with it? When we see a group of teenagers on the beach, walking, heading towards a pier, getting ready to jump off the pier, what are we going to do? First of all, we don't fight it. We're not going to say, grow up, because that's what they desperately want to do, but it takes time. The part about self-consciousness is very interesting because that's coupled with self-awareness. The saddest thing about talking to a group of teenagers is I can inform them that, well, I'm talking to you because you, as a teenage male, are in the demographic most likely to drown. Why do you think that is? And the answer I most often get is, because we're stupid. And that's what teens are told. That's how they feel about themselves. I like to talk to them about some of the aspects of the teenage brain and help them to realize that that risk-taking is what they are wired to do right now. Just like when you were 3 years old and somebody gave you were learning fine motor skills and somebody gave you a crayon so you wrote on everything in sight. Teens are trying to deal with risk and trying to take chances. We can use peer pressure, but peer pressure is mostly when we talk about peer pressure, we talk about, okay, don't let your friends talk you into things, which once again, tell the cat to be a dog. I like to talk to groups of teens and use peer pressure in the opposite direction. I learned this from Bob Pratt, who would say, don't be the bully that talks your friends into doing things that will cost their life. So when I have a group of friends, I'll ask them, okay, who's the best swimmer? Somebody's going to say, that's me. And that person is, I then inform them that they're responsible for making sure that every escapade is survivable by the whole group. They're responsible for everybody else. Now, teens are good at thinking through cold decisions. So we can pre-plan some of those hot decisions ahead of time. That's how fire departments operate. You pre-plan your emergencies. You go through them ahead of time. You act them out sometimes, or if you can get a house that's going to be torn down anyway, you have a controlled burn and practice doing all this stuff. When I was a kid, I grew up in Lake Ontario, and we had a rather large family in a rather small sailboat, and we would cross the lake on the sailboat. And my dad would, every time we were out, we had a Clorox bottle with a face on it, and that was the dummy. And it would, he'd throw it overboard and time us, and we were to pick up that Clorox bottle within a certain amount of time, and he would just watch. He was planning the worst emergency, which for him was he falls overboard. Once again, what is your plan? With a group of kids, there's always somebody who is the fastest runner. He's the one who's going to go get help. There's always somebody who has the best eyes. That's the person who's going to keep an eye on the person in trouble. There's somebody who's got a good cell phone service. They're going to call 911. The best swimmer? No, you don't jump in the water and go get them. You reach, you row, you throw, you float. What around here can you use as flotation? Work them through the whole thing. Once again, these kids think they can't get in trouble, but they would love to be the hero if somebody else got in trouble. Next slide. Okay, this is from my home. This hangs upstairs on my daughter Anna's door. I asked her today, why is this hung on your door so far? This came to mind last week when we were talking about influencing teens by telling them that dying versus drowning was dumb. And Dave Benjamin pointed out that we don't want to put a stigma on drowning, because that's one of the things that makes people think that only dumb people drown. So I'm throwing this out there. Anna tells me, I asked her today, why is this still on your door? She said that when she was an adolescent, this was her armor against peer pressure. There are cooler ways to die. We're coming up on the time of year when families are traditionally get together, family reunions, going to the beach. This is a critical time it's when teens, you might see your cousin that you haven't seen in a year, and the thing that teens want to do is to compare, compete, see how they've grown, who can run faster now, who can swim farther. We know that one of the reasons why adolescent males are more likely to get into trouble is that they are habitually overestimate their swimming ability, which makes sense. Their bodies are growing, they're getting faster, they're getting stronger every day. And usually when they try to do something new, they find out that they've got new abilities they didn't have before. On the water, if you try and find out that those abilities weren't quite what you hoped they would be, it could be the last experience that you have. We know that teens are wired to have new experiences, and that's one of the things that I talk to teens about when I do talk to them about water safety is, I want you to be here tomorrow. I want you to experience your graduation. I want you to experience all kinds of stuff, but you can't do that if you're at the bottom of the lake. I don't want any empty chairs at your graduation. Teens still watch parents, and teens will moderate their behavior based on what they see people around them doing, or what they see the people around them are doing. So as parents, we need to walk the walk. You wouldn't get in the car and drive off without putting your seatbelt on. You wouldn't even leave the driveway if everybody in the car didn't have their seatbelt on. So make sure they got their life jackets on before you leave the dock. We wouldn't send our kids out to play hockey wearing somebody's old figure skates. We want them to have the best equipment, so get some good PFDs, not the junky old orange ones that smell funny out of the bottom of the basement. Family reunions are a good opportunity to up the family water safety culture. If you're going to the family cottage, make sure there's a life ring at the end of the dock. When the kids want to get together and see who's bigger, who's stronger, who grew more this year from last year, that's a great time to have the Family Water Safety Olympics. Can they really swim as far as they think they can? Who's best at throwing a life ring? And here's a good one. Can everybody in your family, if you have a paddleboard, does everybody know how to move an inert person out of the water onto their board so that they can bring them back to the shore? There's YouTube videos on that, and you watch a few YouTubes and then you just practice. There's no reason why CPR training can't be part of your family reunion also.
Thanks, Susan. That was great. I'm going to jump in here with some more life-saving water safety tips that our consortium has put together, our community of best practice. Notice that the National Weather Service uses the same ones that we do as a consortium, and we want all of our member organizations to be as consistent as possible so that the messages start to sink in. If we all try to get creative and come up with our own little catchphrases, it really just muddies the waters. And I like muddy waters, but not as much as BB King. So this is Beach Hazards and Water Safety Awareness Week coming up June 7th. Notice that we started this series of jam sessions in May, which was Water Safety Month. And at the end of the summer, around Labor Day, we're going to have our Stay Safe Around the Water, Safely Enjoy the Great Lakes Week again. So this is probably a half-hour presentation, one given by Megan Dodson from the National Weather Service, who sent me these. I'm going to try to do it in 2 minutes. So here we go. Tip number one, know before you go. Check the National Weather Service's Great Lakes Beach Hazards webpage to see what the current conditions are. And if you are at a beach where they've put up one of the signs that the consortium has distributed, and we've sent out hundreds of them, around the Great Lakes area. There's a QR code on them now. And if you scan that with your smartphone, you instantly get access to this webpage, and you can see what the conditions are at your beach or any beach around the Great Lakes. So that's a fantastic resource. Be cautious in cold water, especially this time of year when the air temperatures are warming up, but the waters haven't caught up yet. People tend to, run, jump in, and that shock of that cold water can cause gas reflux, and people can drown instantly. So warn people about that. Make sure they know the dangers of the cold water, including hypothermia. Stay dry when waves are high. Rip currents can form in 2 to 3 foot waves. You can get knocked down by waves. There's just a lot of dangers with waves. They're beautiful and they look like fun, but there's a lot of dangers there. So be sure you wear a life jacket. Which leads to tip 4, which is don't just bring a life jacket, wear it. The Safe Boating Campaign came up with this. This is their new logo. Especially important for boaters. So often people will fall off the boat. They run the risk of drowning. The people that are left on the boat may not know how to operate it. They may not know where life jackets are. So don't just bring it. Don't just assume you have it. Wear it. Designate a water watcher and know the signs of drowning. Drowning is swift and silent. It's the second leading cause of kids under 15. And if you have these water watcher cards, and we're looking at other options too, like maybe towels or other things, but you can designate someone, and as long as they're holding that, that means they're watching the water, they're watching the kids, and they're not going to look at their cell phone. They're not going to get up and go to the concession stand. Whoever has that card is in charge. Now, ideally, we have a lifeguarded beach, so you don't have to worry about it. You could just enjoy your day. But too many of our beaches still don't have lifeguards, so that puts a lot of would-be rescuers in situations like this. But make sure that someone is watching the water. Steer clear of the pier, especially with the high water levels. Waves, that might be from a storm the night before can come out of nowhere, or as the conditions worsen, you can have more and more waves, and people go out there, they're tempted to go out on the pier, take pictures, whatever. A lot more people are getting swept off of them because of the high water levels. So steer clear of the pier. When in doubt, don't go out. Things like that. Learn the different types of dangerous currents. There's not just the classic rip current. There's also structural currents. You can have longshore currents colliding with them and the incoming waves, creating this washing machine effect, which is really scary and almost impossible to escape. So there's also outlet currents and channel currents. We have all that on our website, including warning signs that you can get for your beach. Know how to escape a dangerous situation. Flip, float, and follow. Flip over onto your back to control your panic, float to conserve energy, and then swim to the side and take the safest path back to shore. We want everyone to know flip, float, and follow, just like they know stop, drop, and roll, and stop, look, and listen, and other great phrases that are so memorable like that. And that's my quick 2-minute summary of some of these great tips that we want everyone to be using and repeating to help keep people safe. So with that, I want to put in a plug for our future jam sessions. One next week is the impact of high water levels and beach erosion on public safety. And then we have several more really good ones coming up after that, up through into July. So please plan on those. If you registered for one, you've registered for all of them. You don't have to keep registering as your schedules change. We're going to be reminding you repeatedly about all of them. And we encourage you to not only attend yourself, but to spread the word to others that you know, so we get more and more people joining us for these. Thanks again to our generous sponsors, Illinois DNR Coastal Management Program, the Sea Grants from Michigan and Illinois and Indiana, Fast Start Corporation, and Wall Street Beach. Thank you so much for your generosity so we can make these free. Thanks to our planning team, again, including our presenters and panelists. Susan, you're fantastic. Mark, can't do this without you. Thank you so much. And everyone else who's helped put these together, back when it was an unconference and now when it's a series of jam sessions. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Again, join us next week. Spread the word. Contact me if you'd like to step up and serve on an action committee to do even more for water safety. Ask your organization if they want to help us out or donate it yourself, and follow us on social media. The point is to get as many people as we can. This is a fast-growing organization. We want more and more people to be aware of everything that we know and help spread the word as a community of water safety enthusiasts and advocates. around the Great Lakes. So thank you so much for your attendance and your attention and your input and everything that you do to help keep people safe. Take care.